Adaora was a vibrant 29-year-old Lagos-based fashion designer who had built her name with flair, boldness, and authenticity. Her Instagram page was full of beautiful designs worn by celebrities, influencers, and brides-to-be. Life was moving fast, and Adaora was determined to make the most of it. It was at a high-profile fashion gala in Victoria Island that she met Mr. Okonkwo, an older, well-dressed man with silver hair, an intimidating presence, and the kind of quiet wealth that made people lean in when he spoke. He wasn't particularly loud or charming, but there was something about him that felt magnetic, dangerous, and refined. He told her he admired her creativity and business sense. Flattered by the attention and the way he seemed to see beyond her beauty, Adaora agreed to meet him again. They dated briefly. Their encounters were always in discreet locations, private lounges, hotel suites, quiet restaurants. He never shared too much about himself, only that he was into real estate and investments, always in between countries, and didn't like publicity. After 2 months, the relationship faded. He stopped calling. No explanation. Adaora moved on, or so she thought. Then, the nausea began. The cravings, the sensitivity to smells. Her period stopped. A home test confirmed it. She was pregnant. Initially, she panicked, but then came the slow excitement. She could do this. She had the means, a supportive cousin who lived with her, and enough independence to raise a child. But when she went for her first scan, the doctor frowned. "It's early," he said. "Come back in a few weeks," she returned. Still, nothing was clearly visible. "Let's monitor it," another doctor told her. At 3 months, she still hadn't seen a heartbeat. At 5 months, she started to show. People around her began congratulating her. She played along, hoping the child was just being stubborn or slow to show up properly on the scan. She changed hospitals, switched doctors, but the results were always vague, confusing, or contradictory. By the 9th month, there was no labor, no signs of delivery. Her belly remained the same, round, firm, and positioned high like a typical late-term pregnancy. But there was no movement, no heartbeat, and no explanation. One gynecologist told her flatly that she wasn't pregnant. Another said it could be a phantom pregnancy. A third recommended psychological evaluation. Adaora was furious. She knew her body. She could feel something there. It wasn't in her mind. By the time the first year passed with no baby, her life had started unraveling. Her cousin, tired of the silence and constant hospital visits, moved out. Her parents called her regularly, urging her to return home to Enugu and stop disgracing the family in Lagos. "You said you were pregnant," her mother screamed over the phone. "So where is the child? Do you think life is Nollywood?" Friends distanced themselves. Rumors began to fly in her neighborhood and within the fashion circle. Some said she was faking it for attention. Others claimed she had used charm to trap a rich man who abandoned her. One ex-friend even posted anonymously on a blog, claiming Adaora was mentally unstable and needed prayers, not clients. Orders stopped coming in. Brides ghosted her. She had to close her shop in Lekki Phase 1 and start working from home. She grew isolated. But every morning she'd wake up and stare at her reflection. Her stomach was there, undeniably pregnant-looking. Some days it felt like it shifted, like something moved. Other days she felt sharp cramps that didn't result in anything. Her period never returned. Every attempt to investigate further led to confusion or dismissal. She started keeping a journal, documenting each feeling, pain, and theory. She even tried herbal remedies, prayer houses, and fasting, desperate for answers. Then one afternoon, sitting alone in her dimly lit apartment during a rainstorm, she opened her old photo album and saw a picture of Mr. Okonkwo. It sent chills down her spine. His eyes, there was something in them that now made her uneasy. She Googled his name for the first time. Nothing came up. No company records, no pictures, no social media presence. It was as though he never existed. Her hands trembled as a dark thought began to creep in. What if this wasn't a pregnancy at all? What if it was something else entirely? But whatever it was, it had been inside her for 10 long years, growing, changing, and refusing to let her go. 10 years into her ordeal, Adaora's spirit was frail, but not broken. After enduring endless hospital visits, shameful stares, and crushing silence, she found herself at yet another clinic in Ikeja, ready to hear the same dismissive remarks. But this time she was referred to a new specialist, Dr. Damilola, a young, bold physician who had just returned from a research program in Germany. He had a reputation for being unconventional, curious, and brave. Adaora almost didn't go. What was the point? But something about the way his receptionist spoke to her gave her the tiniest push of hope. At her first appointment, Dr. Damilola listened, really listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't smirk. He asked specific questions, and he didn't once call her crazy. He went through her 10-year-old files, looked at the inconclusive scans, the lab reports and her journals. Then he said something she hadn't heard in years. "I believe you." That sentence alone broke her down. She wept like a child. Dr. Damilola ordered fresh scans, not the basic ones she'd been getting for years, but a full-body MRI with contrast. He even brought in a radiologist to sit in during the process. After the scan, they called her in and showed her the images. There was a mass, but it wasn't a fetus. It didn't have bones, heartbeat, or fluid. But it wasn't just a tumour either. It had grown roots, tissue extensions that intertwined with her uterus walls, and it was slightly pulsating, like it had its own rhythm. Something about it unsettled the entire team. "This isn't normal," Dr. Damilola said, his voice low, "and I think we need to go in." The idea of surgery scared her, but she had nothing left to lose. The date was set. It would be a controlled exploratory procedure under heavy anesthesia. She signed the consent forms and that night couldn't sleep. All she could think about was Mr. Okonkwo, how he had vanished from her life, how no record of him existed online, how his number had stopped going through after she told him she was pregnant. She began to suspect she had been part of something far darker than she realized. The operation took place on a rainy Thursday morning. The surgical team was handpicked. The nurses were briefed, and spiritual protection prayers were quietly said before the procedure began. Dr. Damilola made the first incision, navigating carefully through the scarred tissue. When he reached the womb, he froze. The team gasped. What they saw wasn't a baby, and it wasn't a tumour. Lodged inside Adaora's womb was a calcified mass shaped like a curled-up animal, its surface covered in what looked like carvings or symbols. It wasn't made of bone, but it was hard. The texture was unlike anything they'd seen before. Part stone, part organic. It was as though it had been crafted and placed inside her, not grown naturally. The nurses stepped back. One fainted. Even the anaesthetist felt sick to his stomach. Dr. Damilola managed to remove the mass, place it in a sealed container, and complete the procedure. When Adaora woke up, she felt lighter, physically and spiritually, but exhausted. Her stomach was no longer swollen, but she was terrified to know what had been inside her. Later that day, Dr. Damilola called in 2 cultural anthropologists and a local spiritual researcher. When they examined the mass, their faces turned grim. One of them recognized the symbols immediately. They were Nsibidi, ancient secret writing used in ritual practices in southeastern Nigeria. The carvings were incomplete phrases, but a few stood out: womb of binding, bearer of gate, and sacrifice in silence. One of the experts made a chilling connection. He remembered a cold case file from years ago, rumors about a wealthy businessman, Okonkwo Arinse, who allegedly used women to host charms that enhanced his influence, wealth, and spiritual protection. The women were never found, Their families believed they had gone mad or died mysteriously. After investigations began, Mr. Okonkwo vanished, and all leads went cold. Adaora was one of those women, except she survived. She was never pregnant with a child. She had been carrying a bound object, a spiritual seal planted inside her, feeding off her life force, keeping her tethered to someone else's power. That explained her constant fatigue, her career collapse, the strange pull toward isolation. She hadn't been abandoned. She had been harvested and left to rot. The hospital sealed the findings, and Adaora was placed under observation. The mass was sent to a private lab for further analysis. But the truth was already clear. Adaora hadn't just been used. She had been imprisoned inside her own body by a man who wore designer suits and smiled like a gentleman. She stared at her reflection that night and finally saw something new: a flat stomach. The burden was gone, but the fear remained. What if there were more women like her out there, still bound, still unaware, still waiting for something that would never come? News of Adaora's bizarre case had spread like wildfire. It started as a whisper in Lagos hospitals, then became a trending blog post, and soon spiraled into national media. The woman who was pregnant for 10 years was plastered across headlines. TV stations begged for interviews. Religious leaders declared it a sign of the end times. Herbalists claimed they had the solution all along. Online trolls accused her of orchestrating an elaborate scam. But through it all, Adaora remained silent. She didn't want fame. She didn't want explanations. She just wanted to be free. She was 39 now. Her face had aged beyond its years. The once vibrant fashion designer was now a woman constantly wrapped in sweaters, not for the cold, but to guard the weight of everything she'd carried for a decade. Her once bright eyes now dimmed with fatigue and grief. Even though the mass had been removed, something still lingered. An unease, a heaviness that sleep couldn't cure. Tests showed no abnormalities. Medically, she was fine, but Adaora could feel it. The thing inside her had left a mark deeper than the womb. Dr. Damilola, now fully invested, consulted a rare panel, a mixture of spiritual healers, anthropologists, and advanced neurologists. Their conclusion was chilling. The object removed from her wasn't just a spiritual charm. It was a vessel, a gateway, a link between Adaora and the man who had placed it there. The cracked mass they had stored in a sealed lab container began emitting strange odors and temperatures. Cameras caught flickers of movement around it, small shadows that vanished when approached. They realized they hadn't truly removed the danger. They had only poked at it. Adaora began having nightmares, visions of being chased down endless hospital corridors, always pregnant, always alone. She'd wake up gasping, feeling hands pressing down on her stomach, and each time the initials OA would echo in her head. Okonkwo Arinze, his face smiling, calm, always watching. It was Dr. Damilola who suggested one final solution: a spiritual medical cleansing procedure. It would take place at midnight, the symbolic hour between endings and beginnings. The goal wasn't just to heal Adaora's body, but to sever the tie that connected her to Okonkwo's curse. It was risky. She could die. But without it, she would never be free. The preparation was intense. The operating room was modified with spiritual symbols drawn in chalk on the walls and floor. The mass, now hard as rock and partially cracked, was brought in, locked in a glass box. A team of doctors, spiritual leaders, and prayer warriors gathered. Candles were lit. Psalms and incantations echoed side by side. Outside, the sky grew dark and thunder rolled in the distance. At 11:55 p.m., Adaora was wheeled into the theatre. She didn't speak. She simply clutched a small necklace, her late grandmother's crucifix, and closed her eyes. At midnight, the lights flickered. The procedure began with prayers. Then medical incisions. They injected a serum designed to purge any remaining remnants of the mysterious mass. As soon as the needle entered her bloodstream, Adaora's body reacted violently. Her limbs thrashed, monitors spiked. She screamed not in her voice but in something deeper, guttural and ancient. Then her heart stopped. For 30 seconds, everything stood still. Then the mass cracked open. Inside, it wasn't just ash or bone. There was a tiny, shriveled object, something like a charm, carved with the initials OA, wrapped in faded red cloth. The moment it was exposed to air, all the candles in the room went out. A burst of cold wind slammed through the windows, shattering the glass. Outside, a lightning bolt struck a transformer, plunging the entire hospital into darkness. As backup generators kicked in, news came in from a hotel across Lagos. A man had been found dead in his suite, no signs of struggle, but his body was contorted, his eyes wide open, his face locked in horror. His ID said Okonkwo Arinze. It was him. At that exact moment, Adaora gasped and came back to life. Her body calmed, her breathing evened out, her pulse returned. The tie had been severed. When she awoke the next morning, her stomach was flat. Her body felt foreign but light. For the first time in 10 years, she walked past a mirror and didn't see a prisoner. She saw herself. In the weeks that followed, Adaora ignored media requests and declined interviews. But she began writing. She started a foundation for women affected by spiritual abuse, ritual manipulation, and medical gaslighting. Her story, once whispered behind closed doors, now became a voice for others who had suffered in silence. Adaora's scars didn't vanish, but now they had meaning. She had survived a spiritual captivity wrapped in the cloth of charm and class. And she made a vow: no other woman should ever go through it alone again. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more teachable and inspiring folk tales by FE.